How can anyone, whether they want to work in a language school or privately from their own laptop anywhere in the world, create a rewarding and impactful career teaching English as a second language, even if they are just starting out or have no teaching experience or ability? Hi, my name is Lynette Kim, and here on the TESOL Talk podcast, I aim to answer that very question. Really important to keep in mind when you're an ESL teacher is that yes, you're a teacher and you've got these students to look after. They've been entrusted to you, particularly in the case where you're teaching adults. You have to still remember, though, that a school that you work for that's employing you is a business. They answer to agents, and students are also customers to that business. So it's really important in the way you treat students. Now, I know it should go without saying that students should be treated with respect, spoken to with respect, treated kindly and politely. But sometimes teachers start to get a bit of a teacher, I'm the teacher, you're the student complex. And I've seen many teachers make mistakes where they go into a classroom. It's almost like a little bit of a power trip. It's like, a student might be 30 seconds or a minute late. Right, I'm going to mark you late. Now, this is a really big deal for students because if they're on student visas and they're late too much, it can affect their visa status. So, this is important stuff. So, you don't want to you want to have a chat with students. You want to find out what's going on. You want to handle these sorts of situations properly. And not just this. I've seen other teachers in the classroom where if the student, might whisper something, might check their phone, might do something they're not supposed to do, but they'll speak to them as if they're a naughty child, almost humiliating them in class. And this isn't a good way to handle these sorts of classroom management issues. Schools will have policies on how you should deal with this, and my view is that you should always handle this privately outside of class. If they're doing something disruptive, have a private chat and just ask them, look, I realize that you've probably got a really good reason why you're checking your phone. Is there something going on? Do we need to, just make an allowance in this case? Or if this is a regular thing, please be aware that we can't do it because it's disruptive. Have a chat to students about things, but do it privately. Don't tell them off in front of other students. I had a case once at a school I worked at where there was a teacher, and she wasn't exactly bragging, but she was telling the whole lunchroom that how she told off this student, and that this student, she really gave it to them. And then she's like, but the student's fine, everything's fine. And I said to her, it's not fine. She goes, oh, yes, this student's Japanese. She's very polite. She answered up the rest of the class. She was fine and happy. And I said to her, she's not fine. You will see something's going to happen because you can't tell off a student the way that this one was told off and, really pulled up in front of all the other students in class as an individual for some kind of bad behaviour, where it goes back to that whole thing about how you feel in primary or high school. So lo and behold, by the end of the day, that teacher was hauled off into the academic manager's office and got moved out of that classroom immediately and had reduced hours. And it was all because that student wasn't fine and in the lunch break had contacted her agent and complained bitterly and threatened to pull out and all kinds of stuff. And the agent had a lot of clout with that school because they're the ones that are sending these students to the school. So agents are customers to schools as well. And so the school had to make some accommodations because that student wasn't happy. And she talked to other students and they weren't happy about it as well. So just remember, yes, you've got a job to do as a teacher and you have responsibilities, particularly if you're in an ELICOS school. There are procedures, there are policies that must be adhered to, particularly for students. But on the other hand, students are customers, and schools must be respected as businesses that employ you. So you have to think, is the way that I'm speaking to this adult student in line with treating them as an equal, not I'm putting myself on a pedestal as a teacher and this person's a student and I'm going to talk down to them or I'm going to tell them off in front of the rest of the class. It's just one of those things. Classroom management should never, ever come to that. So just to be aware, and I mean, I had an incident myself where every day at a certain time, there'd be this weird music going off in the classroom, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I was like, what is that music? And I would ask the class, and no one would answer. Finally, after about a few days of this, students actually pointed to a particular student and her bag, which was on the floor. And I'm like, is that noise coming from your bag? And she sort of nodded very quietly, sheepishly, yes. And I asked her, what is it? And she said it was her prayer music and that she always must do it at 11. And so I said, oh, I understand. All right. Now I left it in front of the class. That was it. So she told us what it was. She finally owned up to it. So the rest of the class knew what was going on. I didn't need to take it any further in that moment. Got back to the lesson, taught it. After the lesson, I went to the academic manager. I was an ESL teacher at the time, and just said, this is what's going on. This student, it's her religion. She's got these prayers. And what can we do to accommodate that because she feels she must do it? So the school made the concession to give her a small area, a little room where she could go out of the class for those few minutes, do her prayers, play it, and then come back in. So then I went back to the student, pulled her aside privately, had a chat to her, just explained that, we would be happy to give her this private space and the time to do what she needed to do, so that it wouldn't interrupt her religion, but also it wouldn't interrupt the students and it allowed them to go on through their lesson without that interruption. She was very happy to have that concession. The students were very happy because they weren't being interrupted anymore, because it was a little jarring, for that few minutes that it went on. And everything was handled privately and respectfully. And this is what you've always got to look for, the respectful way to handle any issues that come up with classroom management. And they can, even with teaching adults, but there's ways to handle them. And this is what you need to think about, the best way to treat students as adults, as customers who are paying, and they're customers of the school that employs you.